Guys, how lucky are we? How lucky are we that we can say we lived in a time where we finally got to see the team up of Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Cyborg on screen in the Justice League. So let's talk about it. So Justice League is the newest film directed by Zack Snyder inside of the DC Extended Universe, and it is the team up we've been waiting for such a long time. I don't know about you guys, but I was excited when Avengers finally came out, but at that point I was wondering, are we ever going to get a Justice League movie? And we're finally here. And to be perfectly honest, Zack Snyder had a very daunting task ahead of him. This wasn't like Guardians of the Galaxy where it was bringing a bunch of nobodies together and hoping that people would like it. Zack Snyder had to take many heavy-hitting, powerful DC characters that had never gotten their own standalone movie before this point and put them into a movie together. And in my opinion, he did a pretty darn good job. And in Justice League, the Parademons and Steppenwolf have come onto Earth with plans of destruction. So Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, also known as Batman and Wonder Woman, need to recruit a bunch of people together to form the Justice League so they can take out Steppenwolf and take out the Parademons. It's a really simple plot for sure, but this movie has a lot to enjoy. For 80 to 85% of this movie, I had a big smile on my face. Seeing all of these characters that I had grown up loving together on screen as a team is simply one of the best movie theater experiences I have had all year. And this movie does have its shortcomings for sure, but the action and how this film looks are not one of them. Like most other Zack Snyder movies, this film looks phenomenal. Every single shot is a painting. It's all very beautiful. And my favorite action scene in the entire film, hands down, has to be an action scene involving Steppenwolf and the Amazonians on Themyscira. It reminded me so much of the Wonder Woman movie we got earlier this year that it made me think that maybe Zack Snyder invited Patty Jenkins over to direct those scenes. And it certainly makes me want Patty Jenkins to direct the next Justice League movie, I can tell you that. But of course, visuals and Easter eggs aren't what we're here for. We're here for the Justice League. And guys, every single actor who portrays a member of the Justice League in this movie is so good. Everybody is so charismatic and likable that you can't help but cling on to them. Ben Affleck proves once again why he is the best Batman today. I for sure was one of those people before BVS that was skeptical of Ben Affleck, but he proved it in BVS, he proves it again here. And Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, guys, her portrayal, her charisma, and everything about how she invents this interpretation of Wonder Woman makes this Wonder Woman my favorite superhero of all time. I mean, we know that she showed a lot of charisma and growth in the Wonder Woman movie directed by Patty Jenkins we got earlier this year, but she shows even more growth in Justice League. There were a couple of moments that actually pulled on my heartstrings. And now we gotta talk about my boy. Let's talk about Ezra Miller as the Flash. Guys, many of the reasons why I had a big smile on my face for most of the runtime is because of Ezra Miller's interpretation of Barry Allen. He's the comedic relief in this film, and he eats up every little bit of runtime he's on screen. Now, I know for sure there are going to be some comparisons between Ezra Miller's interpretation and Grant Gustin's interpretation of the Flash from the CW show, but I don't really think that's fair because their interpretations are very different. However, I will say something they have in common is both of their Barry Allens, they're funny, they're relatable, and they're just downright likable. But with that in mind, one of my favorite parts of Justice League is what Henry Cavill did with his interpretation of Superman. I know there are a lot of people out there who prefer Christopher Reeve and say that he's the best interpretation of Superman we've ever gotten, and I respect that. I love Christopher Reeve. He's definitely one of my favorite interpretations of Superman. But what Henry Cavill did in this film is just show personally to me. He has some moments in this film that just brought tears to my eyes. It was really good stuff, and I want to see Henry Cavill continue to be Superman. Now, as far as the actors go that portrayed Cyborg and Aquaman, although I did enjoy both of their interpretations and both of their personalities, I did think they got a little bit left in the background. want. And a lot of the emotional, hard-hitting scenes that they were supposed to have, I don't necessarily feel that they landed. But I think that has more to do with the runtime of the film, and I'll get to that in a minute. Now I need to move on to my negatives, and I know I haven't mentioned Steppenwolf, and there's a reason for that, guys. Steppenwolf as a villain in this movie, he was just downright pathetic. There's really no way I can sugarcoat it. There was a point in time where Steppenwolf, I completely forgot why he was in this movie. And he's supposed to be such a central part of the plot, I thought that was very confusing. Also, a lot of the CGI for Steppenwolf and some of the action sequences in this movie, they were terrible. They looked like a video game from like 2006 or 2007. Also, during certain points of this movie, there is a family introduced. They live in an area that is very integral to the plot, but I felt as though if this family was taken out and some of the circumstances were changed just minorly, this family didn't need to be in the movie whatsoever. However, my biggest glaring issue with this movie is the runtime and the pacing. This movie has that high-octane Red Bull adrenaline rush that the Lego Batman does, but forgets to do some of the character development and some of the depth that go along with it. Many of the emotional moments never landed for me, and the character introductions to these members of the Justice League I felt were just flat out rushed and very choppy. And the reason why I think that is because the studio heads over at Warner Brothers, they wanted to make this film 2 hours, if not under that. And the original runtime of Justice League was reportedly to be 2 hours and 45 minutes. In my opinion, if this film was allowed to be 2 hours and 45 minutes, or just 2 hours and 30 minutes, I feel as though there would have been a lot more depth and many of the things would have been explained. Because as of right now, it's very apparent to me there are certain sections of Justice League that feel as though they are missing information. But it's like I said, I don't care what the runtime of a movie is, just as long as it is enough time for the story to be told in a cohesive way and give us the best story that we can get our hands on. Now, with those negatives said, guys, I had a complete blast watching Justice League. Sure, I had my issues with the pacing and with Steppenwolf, but the actors portraying all of these phenomenal characters are so likable, charismatic, and just great that I can overlook some of the issues I have with this movie. Even with all the complications that the production had after Zack Snyder suffered a tragedy in his family, I think he did a phenomenal job delivering us a really fun movie and a pretty great Justice League movie. I had a blast watching this, I want to see it again, and I'll say that Justice League is a casual watch. But as always, it is what you guys say that matters. So have you had a chance to see Justice League yet? And what did you think of it? More importantly, who would be your prime director to direct the next couple of Justice League movies? You know, whatever your choice may be, leave it down below so we can get a conversation started. And if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right there and subscribe and become part of the fray of nerds who love cinema. You all have a fantastic day.